All right, Assalamu alaikum. And we're back. As promised, we are back with another live show. Glad to see the brothers already here waiting for me. Before I begin, let me send out some quick tweets to let everybody know that the second show in Refutation is live. So let me do that real quick, and I ask you to do the same. Don't forget to like the video, right? Like the video so that we can get the numbers up on YouTube. So make sure you like the video. Some quick tweet. Share it. Assalamu alaikum, Otolo Lich. Haven't seen you in a while, brother. How you been? Good to see you here today. Good to see you in the room today. Let me just send out a quick tweet. Let's see, refuted. Okay, sure it comes up on Twitter looking good, and then we'll begin. This is another good video. I checked out some of his videos, and guess what? I did find that he does have a video like I talked about, where it's talking that immigration stuff. Now remember what I told you, when they start talking that immigration stuff, that is a form of racism and bigotry. He tries to claim that, oh, he's not being bigoted and racist, but yes, it is. When you start talking that immigrant invasion kind of stuff, and that's a form of white racist bigotry. So I guess he's attempting to, because we understand, as I said before, that a lot of Europeans don't really accept the Turkish as Europeans, right? It seems like from what I've seen, it seems like they kind of look at the Turks as if y'all are, if the Turks are kind of like more Middle Eastern than you are white European. So you've had that stigma attached to the Turks for a long time, and they're not really accepted as being white Europeans, even though they may look, they look white and whatever. But it seems like, the Europeans kind of look at the Turks as if as the Turks are different people, more or less like you're Asian or Middle Eastern or something like that. They don't, they don't kind of accept you as white Europeans. And so it appears that he's trying to kiss up to the ass of the white, the Anglo-Saxon Europeans and Westerners by playing this immigration stuff. So he does have a video about immigration. So unfortunately, as I said I was going to leave it as just leaving him as somebody who was criticizing Islam. But I saw that video, and yep, he's playing the threat to the Western society, Western civilization, typical coded white racist. Coded language game where they won't say the stuff outright, but they use these kind of coded and roundabout subjects such as the immigration problem. So yeah, he does have a video about that, about the immigration. So I guess I got to put him in that category. That's more than just criticizing Islam. When you start talking about that immigration stuff, and it's funny how they always do the thing with the immigration thing where, they and this is what I always tell you. They always say, when I charge them with this, they're like, oh, Islam is not a race. But in the immigration video, they talk about Muslims as if Muslims are a race, right? Because it was funny. There's a part in the video where he talks about Germany, because I guess he lived in Germany for a while, and he was talking about how the ethnicities in Germany. Well, religion is not your ethnicity, right? Religion is your religion, what you practice. That's not your ethnicity. A white European Muslim is not ethnically is not a different ethnicity than other white Europeans. They just have a different religion. But in that video, he talks about, this was the ethnic breakup of people, and then he talks about Muslims as if Muslims are an ethnicity, and they're not, right? Muslim is a religion. Your ethnicity is if he's Arabian or African, you know, or East Asian or whatever. That would be their ethnicity, not their religion. But that's the game, and this is what I'm talking about when I charge these people as being bigots and racist. Because when you start making Muslims as if we are a race, and that's what they always say, oh, but Islam is not a race. I say, yeah, but they always talk about Muslims as if we are a race. See? So when he made in his video that Muslims were an ethnic group, I say, well, what about it? What about a white German Muslim? Would they fit into the category? They're white Germans. All right. What about any white Germans who are Muslim? Are you going to make them a different ethnic group? No. So this shows you that they do talk and view Muslims as if Muslims are a race. So I charge bigotry and racism. When you're not talking about Islam and you're talking about this immigrant stuff and all of that, that is racism and bigotry, sir. Now, tonight's topic is he has a video that is called The No Compulsion in Islam Lie, right? That's the name of the video that he has. The No Compulsion in Islam Lie, right? Obviously, you can tell from the title that he claims that, wa alaikum salam, Sammy, welcome back. Shazad Ali, welcome back, brother. Appreciate you guys coming back to check out this next show, right? So, so what was I saying? So, yeah, Muhammad Zakaria, welcome, alhamdulillah. Yeah, share the video. Yes, I give you permission. Share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, on Instagram. Share it. Let's get it out there. Don't forget to like the video. You got to like it also. Make sure you like the video and share it. So, as I was saying, that yeah, he has this other video that I saw called The No Compulsion in Islam Lie. In other words, the claim that there's no compulsion in Islam is a lie. And of course, you already know I've refuted that already. We just did a show about that a few weeks ago, right? A week or two ago, where I provided you my notes for how that that claim is refuted. And I have an older video where I refute David Wood, I think, about that as well, and others on that. So I've been refuting that for a number of years, but I don't mind doing it again now. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at it and listen to his video, and we will address the points one by one. Also, with tonight's show, also, yeah, this is a good thing too, is that, remember I wanted to do the topic about abrogation. Well, guess what? This video that he did allows me to bring that topic into this. So we can, as they say, hit one target. I mean, hit two targets with one stone, right? So this because he brought up the abrogation claim. So this refutation I'm going to do will allow me to actually include the topic of the so-called claims of abrogation and prove that no, the peaceful verses have not been abrogated. So that's going to be a special feature that you get in this video, that not only do you get to hear me refute him on that topic of the no compulsion lie, but I also get to do the topic that I said I was going to do about the abrogation thing. So I'm going to include that subject in this video here. No further ado, let's go ahead and get into it while we refute his claim about the so-called no compulsion stuff. All right, let's listen.
Here on YouTube recently, I want to increase my bluntness and my criticism of Islam even more. I want to talk about a specific phrase that you hear very often from moderate Muslim apologists. If you're hearing and reading a lot about Islam, you might have heard the phrase.
Very quickly, brother Shazad, yeah, I checked it. I just checked a little while ago. Unfortunately, at last I saw, I still have only 3 people. Unfortunately, I still only have 3 people. Still waiting for 2 more. And I did check that Apostate Prophet does have a Patreon page. He actually does have one, and he has 294 people. He does have a Patreon page. He has 294 people. It doesn't show how much donation he's getting, because they give you that option to, you can either show how much you're getting or you can hide it and just show your Patreons. But so it doesn't show how much Patreon. But there's an interesting thing that it does show, is that his goal is to get $2,000 in donation, right? And it shows that he has 80% of his goal. So that means he's close to his $2,000 goal of donations, all right? So it says that his goal is to get $2,000 in donation, and it says that he's 80% there. So that means it doesn't show how much, but he's 80%. So 80% of 2,000, he's almost there. He's almost to his goal. And he has 294 people. All right. So, yeah, brother, the link. So what you do, Odo, is go to the link in the description of the video, the one that says Mr. Islam Answers Back Patreon. Look for the link that has Patreon in it. Click on that. It'll take you to my Patreon page, and it'll show you where you can join. So you just click on where it says join, and then it'll give you all the details on how to make your pledge and how to set everything up right there. It's fairly simple. So that's how you do it. Just use the link in the description of this video. Or you can check it on my Twitter. On my Twitter, I always post it where it shows you the Patreon page. Just click on that, and like I said, it'll show you where it says join, become a patron or whatever. Click that little button, and then it'll give you the rest of the information on how to do it. But yeah, I checked his, and yeah, he has 294 people. And Shazad Ali, I guess you're giving me a hint that I may have more, inshallah. Well, good. I'm gonna check it. I'll check it after the show. I'll check it after the show to see. So like I said, let's go ahead and get into this, and let's address this. Let's address this here.
Phrase a lot. There is no compulsion in religion. I'm sure almost everyone who's watching this video knows what I'm talking about. This phrase is very often brought up by people, very often in a wrong way, without even knowing their religion properly. And in the next moment they want to accuse you of taking things out of context and being Islamophobic. The phrase comes from the Quran, in chapter 2, verse 256. It goes, "There is no compulsion in religion. The right course has become clear from the wrong. So whoever disbelieves in falsehood and believes in Allah has grasped the most trustworthy handhold with no break in it, and Allah is hearing and knowing." Some present it as "let there be no compulsion in religion," but which comes from the Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran. But "there shall be no" or "there is no compulsion" is a more accurate translation of the verse. That's what the Quran says. But what moderate Muslim apologists want to say with this phrase is that everyone is free under Islam to practice their own religion, and they can believe whatever they want to believe. No one can be forced into Islam. No one can be fought because of their disbelief. And some even bring it to the extent that there is no killing of apostates in Islam because there is no compulsion in Islam. All of these things are either completely or partially false and taken out of context. Now, I want to stay fair, but I want to make 2 points in advance about this Quran verse. The first point is that this Quran verse was revealed at a much earlier time than later verses like the...
Okay, so here you see he's going into the claim that this verse was revealed earlier, and it was revealed before Surah 9:5, and therefore when 9:5 was revealed, 9:5 overrides that or abrogates this verse, and that is a complete lie. I will show you with evidence that that is not true. Okay, first of all, nowhere in the Quran does Allah say that. Nowhere does Allah say, "I have now revealed to you 9:5, and now there is compulsion in religion." 9:5 doesn't say that. 9:5 has a context to it, which has nothing to do with going against the idea of compulsion, because 9:5, if you read the context, goes from chapter 9, verses 1 through 13. And it shows how the pagans of Mecca had broken the treaty with the Muslims. In fact, the verse right before verse 5, verse 4, actually says that Allah orders the Muslims to keep the treaty with those who keep the treaty. So verse 5 is therefore about those who violated the treaty and attacked the Muslims. This is not a violation of compulsion in religion. This is also not because he tries to make it like 9:5, as you see how he posted it here. He only posted that part to make it seem like this verse is saying kill all polytheists wherever you find them. But when you read the verse in context, he always claims that he said that, you heard him say it, that the Muslims say, oh, that you're taking it out of context and everything. And yes, you are taking it out of context. So he posted, as you see how he posted on the screen, where he posts only the part that says kill the polytheists wherever you find them, giving the implication as if this verse is giving a broad command to go out and randomly just kill any polytheist wherever you find them. And that is not the case. The verse in its context, as I said, the verse right before it, verse 4, shows that it makes a distinction between the polytheists who kept the treaty. In verse 4, it says, honor the treaty until the end of the term of the treaty. And then it goes to verse 5, and verse 5 talks about those who violated the treaty. So it's not a command to kill all polytheists wherever you find them. It's in reference to those who violated the treaty and attacked the Muslims first, and this is proven if you keep reading from verse 5, keep reading all the way, keep reading to verse 13. That whole context is about that. And so when you get to verse 13, it makes it clear. It says they tried to expel the messenger, and they attacked you first. So this is why 9:5 says to fight them and kill them, because they attacked the Muslims first. They had attacked and were trying to kill the Muslims first. So Allah says for them to fight back because they violated the treaty. They aimed at the expulsion of the messenger. They tried to kill the messenger. They tried to expel him and the Muslims. And it says, and it clearly says in that verse, they attacked you first. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate Prophet, that the lie that's being told is your lie. You're the one that's lying here, sir. And this is what I'm saying, as I said in the last video, you're going to keep getting caught out and exposed because you're misquoting, you're misrepresenting the Quran, you're leaving off, ignoring the context, you're ignoring verses that come right before it or right after it. But you know what? Keep doing it. Keep doing it because that makes my job easier. So keep on misquoting the Quran, keep on ignoring the verse right before it that refutes you, keep ignoring the verse after it that refutes you. Keep doing it because my all praise is due to Allah. That makes my job that much easier. So yes, keep on misquoting it so I can keep on exposing your lies. Okay, so like I said, so the claim that he's making here is that the verse, that 256, chapter 2, verse 256, that said no compulsion, it was revealed at an earlier time. This is the claim that they make, right? A lot of them make this, that verse was revealed at an earlier time, they say. And then they say, but later, then the violent verses were revealed, supposedly. But as I've shown in my previous videos addressing this subject, that no such concept exists. The Prophet never taught that. The Prophet never said that, oh, later verses override earlier verses. No, in fact, there's a verse in the Quran that says all of the Quran is binding. In fact, matter of fact, where's my book at? In fact, as I said, there's a verse where Allah shows that all the Quran is binding. So this claim that, oh, later verses override, no, sir. No, the Prophet never taught that. The Prophet never said that, earlier verses of the Quran are now insignificant and now later verse. No, that's not true. The whole Quran is relevant and significant. It's all binding on us. There is no concept where the Prophet said, or most importantly, where Allah said. Allah himself never said that, I have now, earlier verses are now no good and they don't matter anymore. Allah never said that. And none of those verses that they try to quote about so-called abrogation, those verses aren't talking about abrogation of the Quran. The verses are talking about how the Quran has abrogated the previous scriptures. Not that the Quran itself is abrogated by itself. They always use those verses and misquote them. The Quran, I repeat, is not claiming in those verses that they quote, what's the one? Chapter 2, and the other one, I forgot the other verse that they like to quote. But none of those verses are saying that the Quran itself is abrogated by itself. Those verses are showing how the Quran abrogates the previous revelation, the previous scriptures, not the Quran itself. Right? As I said, in Quran chapter 28, verse 85, shows us that the whole Quran, all of it is binding on us. There is no such thing as, earlier verses are now thrown away and later verses take over. No, sir. No. All the Quran is binding. All of it. Old verses, new verses, verses from Medina, verses in Mecca, all of it is binding, sir. Okay? So, no, not going to get away with that one. Not going to get away with that one. Okay, so let's listen to what he has to say a little further.
The sword first, that order to fight the non-Muslims wherever you find them. It was also most likely revealed long before verse 29 in chapter 9, where the Quran orders the Muslims to fight all those who don't believe in Islam and to force the jizya on them. And
again, this is false as well. I've also refuted that claim also about 929, which it's not saying to fight all non-Muslims. This is a lie how they keep misquoting the Quran. It's not saying that. As I've showed before, I've refuted that before also, that as the Quran clearly states, right? So for example, chapter 2, verse 190, it states very clearly that fight back against those who fight you, but do not be the aggressor. Chapter 60, verse 8 of the Quran says that Allah does not prohibit you from being kind and just to those who are not trying to fight you for your religion or drive you from your homes. Allah says, be kind and just to them, for Allah loves the doers of justice. So these verses are clear that there is no command to fight and kill all non-Muslims, Mr. Apostate Prophet. You're wrong, you're ignorant, you're misinformed, or I could just say you're lying straight out. Since you claim to be an ex-Muslim, I'm going to say you're lying then, because you should know better, right? But that's the case with a lot of these so-called ex-Muslims. A lot of them are ignorant. If they really were ex-Muslims, then they're ignorantly dumb. They were dumb Muslims. They were ignorant Muslims. They were ignorant Muslims if they really were ex-Muslims, right? They were ignorant ex-Muslims. They were ignorant Muslims if they practiced it at all, right? Because the Quran is clear that there is, the fighting that's done is in self-defense. All of those verses in Quran are verses of self-defense. All of them are fighting about verses of self-defense or fighting on behalf of others who are being oppressed or persecuted, right? But none of them order the random killing of unbelievers just because you're an unbeliever. That is a lie, and I've proven that on numerous occasions. On numerous occasions I've proven that, and we'll prove it here in this video again. Okay?
This is an important point, because if you are familiar with Islamic theology, you should know that if some Quran verses contradict each other in any way, the verse that was revealed later is more valid.
Okay.
The Quran makes that very clear.
Stop right. No, the Quran does not make that clear. That's a goddamn lie. That's a damn lie. No, the Quran says nowhere does the Quran say. First of all, in chapter 4, verse 82, Allah says that the Quran does not contradict itself, number one, and it doesn't. So there's nowhere in the Quran, that is a lie, Mr. Apostate Prophet, you're a liar. There's nowhere in the Quran that says that if a verse contradicts, does that even make sense? Does that even make any damn sense? That if a verse contradicts a verse, then the later, oh, shut up. You know what I mean? Like, come on, for real? I mean, you could see the ignorance of these people. First of all, matter of fact, let me show you the verse. Let me prove my point. Let me show you the verse to prove to you that he's lying, that, Quran says if a verse, get the hell out of here with that. There's no verse that says anything like that if a verse contradicts. No verse can contradict. First of all, no verses in the Quran can contradict each other, and they don't. Okay? And they don't. Look here. Look at chapter 4, verse 82. Okay? All right, as you see on the screen, chapter 4, verse 82, what does it say? It says, do they not then consider the Quran? Had it been from other than Allah, they would surely have found therein much either discrepancy or contradiction. In other words, if it's from Allah, there's no contradiction. So Allah says, look, consider it carefully. Had this book been from other than Allah, you would have found in it contradictions in it. In other words, it can't contain contradictions in it. If it contradicts itself, then it's not from Allah. So he just told a lie by saying, in the Quran it says that if a verse contradicts another, you go with the later verse. No, it doesn't say that at all. It says it can't contradict itself at all, in fact. And these verses do not contradict. Because when you look at them, they are in the context of, as I've shown on numerous occasions, they're either fighting in self-defense, or you're fighting against persecution, which is self-defense, or fighting on behalf of others who are being oppressed and persecuted, which is also self-defense. Because you're defending a weak and defenseless people. You're fighting for them. That's self-defense as well. So nowhere does the Quran say that, if a verse contradicts, and by the way, the Prophet never taught that either. Which again wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense. So the Quran doesn't say that. And the prophet never taught that either. That is not a concept that the prophet taught, saying that, oh, if you find, if a verse contradicts another verse, then go with the later verse. That wouldn't even make sense. First of all, if you were to acknowledge a contradiction, you would be saying that the Quran is not from Allah. So that's how you know that's a lie, because the prophet never said that. The prophet, I repeat, the prophet Muhammad cannot be shown anywhere to teach such a bogus concept that, oh, if a verse contradicts. That would be an acknowledgement that the Quran is false. You know that, right? Brothers and sisters, right? That would be, you would be acknowledging that the Quran contradicts itself. And you would thereby be saying that that the Quran is not from Allah, based upon chapter 4, verse 82, as you see on the screen. This verse makes it clear that no, you can't go around claiming as a Muslim that the Quran contradicts itself. So if I find contradictory verses, let me go with the other one over the other. No. You better check maybe your understanding is wrong. Maybe you interpret it wrong, because clearly the Quran cannot contain contradictions against itself. So like I said, the main point is that he's lying right now. What he said is a bold-faced lie. You heard him. He said in the Quran. No, sir, the Quran does not say that anywhere. Nowhere does the Quran make such a bogus, foolish claim. Nowhere. Okay? All right, so let's continue with the rest of his claim.
Very clear. The second point is that many scholars, even very important ones like Ibn Kathir, said that a large number of verses, including the no compulsion verse, have either been partially or completely abrogated and practically replaced by the order of fighting them. The view that the no compulsion verse has been completely abrogated is rather a very traditionalist view, but the view that it has been partially abrogated is a rather mainstream Islamic view. It only makes...
All right, that's a lie also. So now I'm going to show you my notes to show you that he's lying. You heard what he said? Let's go back to that again. Let's listen to that again. Let's listen to that again.
Large number of verses, including the no compulsion verse, have either been partially or completely abrogated and practically replaced by the order of fighting them. The view that the no compulsion verse has been completely abrogated is rather a very traditionalist view, but the view that it has been partially abrogated...
That don't even make sense what he's saying. Traditionalist Islam and mainstream. Well, what is that? First of all, let's deal with this verse of the sword claim. First of all, did you guys know that there is no evidence at all that the companions ever called this verse of the sword? There's no evidence that the prophet or the companions ever called this thing verse of the sword. There's no evidence for that. So let me pull up my notes. All right. Yeah, there's no evidence that the verse was called verse of the sword. No evidence for that. I got that from an article by Dr. Isra Ahmed Khan, as you see up there on the screen. He talked about that in his article, Arguments for Abrogation in the Quran, a Critique. He reveals that there is no evidence that the prophet, first of all, Allah, most importantly, Allah. There's no evidence that Allah ever called it verse of the sword. He said there's no evidence that the prophet called it verse of the sword. He said there's no evidence that the companions called it verse of the sword. Verse of the sword is a name that was made up later. It is not, it didn't come from Allah, and most importantly, it didn't come from the prophet. That's a name that was made up later. Okay, that's a name that was made up later. As far as the claim that these verses, he claims that the claim that the verse was totally abrogated is traditionalist, and that is partially is mainstream. I don't know what that means. I mean, isn't the traditional and the mainstream supposed to be the same thing, right? The traditionalist view and the mainstream view is supposed to be the same thing. So I don't get that. But in any case, I guess he's trying to say that, that the view that verse was abrogated, that the peaceful verses are abrogated, is supposedly the overwhelming view of Islam, and that is false, as you're seeing on the screen. By the way, as I said, if you join my Patreon, I'm going to make these notes available to you as well. These are new notes that I'm going to add to the Patreon, to my patrons, okay? So if you become a patron or you already are a patron, after this show, you will have access to these notes about abrogation to help you refute those who make this claim as well. So let's take a look at some of the views and let's see what we see about the abrogation. So we have here, it says that Mustafa Zaid speaks on this and says, abrogation, in his book Abrogation in the Noble Quran, He said he counted over 140 verses that are claimed to have been abrogated by the so-called verse of the sword, 9:5. Zayd has shown that all claims of abrogation by verse 9:5 are false. Are false. Okay? In the book Abrogation in the Quran and Islamic Law, a critical study of the concept of naskh and its impact, page 120, by author Louis Fatoui, he says, the claims of all peace verses being abrogated is baseless. Right? This is the view, and look, so notice he refutes the claim of Mr. Apostate. He says this view is the view of the overwhelming majority of scholars. The overwhelming majority of scholars, just as you saw the brother in the text, I think his name is Salafi Dawa, he also pointed that out too, that the majority of the scholars say that no, 9:5 has not abrogated the peaceful, all the peaceful verses. So yes, that's the correct position. Mr. Apostate here is wrong by saying, oh, it's the traditional view that the verse was totally, all the peaceful verses are totally abrogated by 9:5. That is a lie, Mr. Apostate Prophet. You're lying. You're wrong, you're ignorant, you're incorrect. Okay? The correct information is that the traditionalist view, the majority view, is that 9:5 does not abrogate all those verses. Okay? As you see here, it says the claims of all peace verses being abrogated is baseless. And this is the view of the overwhelming majority of scholars. The number of claims of abrogation by 9:5 grew over time. In other words, Mr. Fatoui is telling us that this is something that was created later. This is an idea that was created later. It did not come from Allah. It did not come from the teachings of the Prophet. The Prophet, peace be upon him, did not teach that 9:5 abrogated all peaceful verses. That is something that was made up. It's an innovation that the Prophet did not teach. I want to be clear about that. All right, so he says the number of claims of abrogation by 9:5 grew over time, which clearly shows that the claims were based on the opinion of later scholars rather than sources that go back to the Prophet or even his companions or the successors. So Mr. Apostate, you're wrong. You claim that it's the traditional view. That is incorrect. The traditional view is that 9:5 does not abrogate all the peaceful verses. You are wrong. Here we have another source, Imam Zarkashi, in his book Al-Burhan fi Ulum al-Quran. Right? I think that translates as the evidence for the sciences of Quran. I think, right? I think that's the correct translation of that. The evidences for the sciences of the Quran, something to that effect. Right? It says many commentators of the Quran were incorrect in their understanding that the verse of the sword abrogated the various verses of patience and forbearance. This is because abrogation entails a complete termination of a legal ruling never to be implemented. This is definitely not the case with these verses. Zarkashi goes further. He says the verse of the sword by no means abrogated the verses of peace. Okay. This is a more modern scholar here, Dr. Abdel Halim, commenting on 9:5, says, consistent with the restrictions on war elsewhere in the Quran. That's the argument that I told you guys, remember? That's the argument that I told you, right? That's the argument that I told you, that these verses are consistent with the other verses in the Quran, showing that Allah says only fight back in self-defense. Allah does not like the aggressors. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate, it can be no verse of aggression because that would contradict the Quran, and no verse says that. Okay, no verse violates the verses that says don't be the aggressor. So where were we? Yeah. So Dr. Abdel Halim, commenting on 9:5, says that it is consistent with restrictions on war elsewhere in the Quran. The immediate context of this quote-unquote sword verse exempts such polytheists. Exactly, that's what I just told you, right? It exempts polytheists who do not break their agreements and who keep the peace with the Muslims. So Mr. Apostate he quoted it falsely, only showing the part that says find the polytheists wherever you kill them wherever you fight them and kill them wherever you find them. But as Dr. Halim shows, and as I've already explained, that the verse right before it, verse 4, clearly shows that it makes an exemption. It makes a distinction between the polytheists who have kept the treaty. It says honor the treaty with them. And then verse 5 talks about those who violated the treaty. So it's showing you that there are two groups of the polytheists. Those who have kept the treaty, it says honor the treaty and be at peace with them. But the ones who violate it, and as I said in verse 13, it says they attack the Muslims first. They attack the Muslims first, it says. Okay. Here we have another modern Imam Zaid Shakir. In the article New Islamic Directions, among the verses it is claimed are abrogated by the verse of the sword is the following. He quotes the verse, which is Surah 861. If they, i.e. your enemies, incline towards peace, then you should likewise incline and place your trust in Allah. Surely He hears and knows all. Right? Imam Qurtubi engages in a lengthy discussion of why this verse is not abrogated. In the context of his discussion, he mentions that this verse is the basis for Muslims entering into a treaty of peace with non-Muslims that can extend indefinitely. So as you see, Mr. Apostate Prophet and David and all these other people, they keep trying to give this false idea that Islam has done away with the peaceful verses, and now we are supposed to go out and fight. That we're supposed to fight them. We're supposed to attack. We're supposed, you know what I mean? And that's a complete lie. That's a complete lie. The verses of the Quran still show that we can be at peace with those who are at peace with us. Okay? We can still be at peace with those who are at peace with us. Okay, truth to power, welcome, peace. Peace. Oh, that's Brother Hakeem Muhammad. Welcome, Brother Hakeem Muhammad. Good to see you here, brother. Good to see you here. Good to see you here. Okay, so as I said, you can see that they try to give this impression that Islam, that the Muslims now have, we're bloodthirsty and we're commanded to, now we have to just go out and ravage and fight everybody. No, sir, Mr. Apostate Prophet. The Quran is clear that we can be at peace with those who are at peace with us. It's very clear. We can be at peace with those who are at peace with us. There is no command to ignore peace and now we start fighting and attacking everybody who's not Muslim. That is a lie, sir. That is not what Islam teaches. That is not what the Quran orders. Okay? Continuing, we have Imam. Now we're going back to a classical scholar. Right? Now remember, he said that Ibn Kathir said that the verse was abrogated. But let's see what Ibn Kathir says. First, let's go to Imam Tabari, another classical scholar, showing him that the traditional view is that the verses are not abrogated. So now I'm going back to classical scholars. Imam Tabari similarly rejects the idea that this verse 861 is abrogated. He mentions, as for those who repeat what Qatada and others mention concerning the abrogation of this verse by, i.e. the verse of the sword, it is a baseless statement, unsubstantiated by the Quran, the Sunnah, or sound intellect. Do you hear that? That's a classical scholar. That's traditional, Mr. Apostate. That's a traditional view. He's telling you that the idea that these peaceful verses are abrogated by the verse of the sword is baseless, unsubstantiated by the Quran, the Sunnah, or even sound intellect. So even if you're not good at reading the Sunnah or whatever, just your sound intellect should let you see that the idea that those verses are abrogated is false. Now, look, I got Ibn Kathir. You heard him in the video. He claims that, I don't know where he got that from, but he claims that Ibn Kathir said that, yeah, the verses are abrogated. Now, here's the thing about Ibn Kathir that you got to understand, which a lot of times people don't get. You got to see that when you read Ibn Kathir, that Ibn Kathir will, in many cases, he will give you all the opinions, right? He will show you how different people have interpreted things, and then he will give you the correct interpretation. So a lot of times people only read a portion of Ibn Kathir, and they think that he's giving that opinion that's what it is. No, Ibn Kathir many times gives you a list of the different interpretations, right? He wants you to see the view. He'll show you, hey, so-and-so said this, and so-and-so said this, and so-and-so said that. And then he'll say, but the correct position is this. So a lot of times people read the one part and they think that part that they read is what it is. No, Ibn Kathir, he likes to give you the full scope to let you see how different people interpret it, and then he will show you what is the majority or the correct interpretation. So that's where they're missing it. So as you can see, this is what Ibn Kathir's position is. It says, Ibn Kathir, after mentioning the opinion that this verse 861 is abrogated, He specifically rejects that idea. He states there is no contradiction, abrogation, or specification in this verse. So Ibn Kathir is saying that no, 861, that's the verse that says if your enemy wants to have peace with you, you should have peace with him. So Ibn Kathir is showing you that no, that verse is not abrogated by verse of the sword. The so-called verse of the sword. Ibn Kathir says no, the verse is not abrogated. 861 is still an applicable verse. That if your enemy wants peace with you, the Muslims are supposed to have peace with the enemy if the enemy wants peace. Okay? So Ibn Kathir shows that that verse is not abrogated. So I don't know, Mr. Apostate, you're wrong. Here we have another, Mahmoud al-Ayyub, in his book, The Quran and Its Interpreters, on page 201, concerning 290 being abrogated. Remember, that's the verse that says that fight back against those who fight against you, but do not be the aggressor, because Allah does not love the aggressors. Now, that's a very important point to take note of, that Allah is making it clear that he doesn't love the aggressors. If he doesn't love the aggressors, why would he then tell the Muslims to now turn into aggressors and start fighting people just because you're not Muslim? Obviously, he wouldn't do that, right? Obviously, he would not contradict. He wouldn't do that. Because as 482 says, chapter 482, he would then be contradicting himself, and Allah is not going to contradict himself, and he does not contradict himself. Okay? So this is Mahmoud al-Ayyub in his book, The Quran and Its Interpreters, concerning that verse. He says, look, once again, Ibn Kathir, apostate prophet, said Ibn Kathir says the verses were abrogated. Well, all these other scholars interestingly are saying Ibn Kathir doesn't say that, Mr. Apostate Prophet. All these other people are showing that Ibn Kathir does not say that. So here's another person showing that Ibn Kathir does not agree that the verses were abrogated. He says Ibn Kathir objects to this view that 290 was abrogated. And he gives the source, Ibn Kathir, volume 1, page 400, where Ibn Kathir rejects the idea that chapter 2, verse 190, which talks about fighting in self-defense, was abrogated by a supposed claim to now be the aggressor. Ibn Kathir rejects the idea that that verse was abrogated. Okay? According to still other commentators, the verse was not abrogated. The view of Umar ibn Abd al-Aziz ibn Abbas on this verse 290, do not kill women, children, old men, or anyone who offers you peace and withdraws his sword. He says, if you commit such acts, you have committed transgression. So there you go, from the companions showing that they also are of the opinion that no, that verse was not abrogated, and that if you do attack somebody who wants peace with you, you are committing an act of transgression. You're in the wrong. You're guilty of a crime. You're violating Allah's command. All right. See, now you see, and this is my point. They always try to claim that, moderate. You heard him in the video. Oh, the moderate Western Muslim. Oh wait, no, sir. As I said in my other videos, this ain't got nothing to do with no Western or moderate. This has to do with the facts of what Islam says, the facts of what the Quran says. I'm quoting scholars from the Middle East, Ibn Kathir, the companions. What better than that, right? What better than that? Classical scholars from the Middle East, Tabari, Ibn Kathir, showing that no, this is not a Western Muslim idea, sir. But see, as I told you, that's what they want, brothers and sisters, right? Right? Like I told you, that's what they want. They want to sell you that narrative that, oh, this is the Western Muslim idea. He's only saying that because he's a Western Muslim. That's how they want to try to discredit you and make it seem like, oh, this idea, you're making it up because you're a Western Muslim. The so-called real Islam teaches to be violent. But as I'm proving here that no, this has nothing to do with being a Western Muslim. This has to do with being a Muslim who practices and follows what Islam has to say. That's what this has to do with. It has nothing to do with being Western. Because as I'm showing you, I'm quoting to you Muslims from the classical period who were from the Middle East in that region. And they're saying what I'm saying. And I'm saying what they're saying. And they weren't Western Muslims who were supposedly influenced by the West. And as I said before, the West doesn't influence me because the West is violent. The West is racist. The West is imperialist and colonialist. So the hell are we taking something from the West for? Right? Why would I be influenced by the West when the West has shown me, especially as a black American, violence and aggression? How the hell I'm going to look to the West to supposedly make me try to water down Islam when the West has not shown me that doesn't even have that position? You see what I'm saying? So no, this has nothing to do with being a Western Muslim. It has nothing to do with being influenced by the West, because the West does not teach that itself. All right? Okay, so let's be clear about that. Okay. And as I show here, here's that verse that I was talking about. Chapter 28, verse 85, which shows you that the whole Quran is binding on us. See what it says? It says, most surely, he who has made the Quran binding on. Notice what it says, the Quran. It doesn't say a part of it, some of it. The Quran, period. See that? Allah, surely, he who has made the Quran binding on you. That means the whole thing is binding. Not some of it, not 10% of it, not the later parts, only the parts in Medina. No, all of it is binding. That verse shows all of it. The Quran. It says the Quran. That means all of it is binding on you. Will you bring back to the or on you will bring you back to the destination. So this verse is clear. This verse is clear. This verse is clear. You know what I'm saying? This verse is clear. All right. Let's continue.
It is a rather mainstream Islamic view. It only makes sense to think that the no compulsion verse has been at least partially abrogated, because there is a specific ruling in Islam that we all know by now. The dhimmi system and the jizya. It always feels so dirty saying this word, and it reminds me of the smell of... Never mind. I have explained the dhimmi system and the jizya before in another video, but to summarize it very quickly, dhimmi refers to non-Muslim communities under Islam, because there is no such thing as equality in Islam. While the jizya refers to protection money. Yes, protection money. Taken from...
All right, let's deal with that. I've addressed this before in some of my videos as well. This is, this is why we charge them with bigotry, because they're always trying to demonize Islam and make it seem sinister and evil and it's protection money. Look, even Western scholars have refuted the idea that jizya is so-called protection money. Even the Islamic history shows that it's not protection money. Matter of fact, I'll read some of it to you. Right? Matter of fact, there's a case where, first of all, what is the jizya? The jizya is for the non. Let me tell you the correct meaning of the jizya and the dhimmi. The dhimmis are non-Muslim citizens who live in the Muslim, nation, empire, country, or whatever the case may be, right? Which under true Islamic nation, all right. And they are the people who are not, they're not Muslims, and they live amongst the Muslims in the Muslim, they're citizens they're non-Muslim citizens of the Muslim country or Muslim state or nation, right? And they have this protected status, and they give the jizya as just like anybody in any other nation has to pay a tax, right? You pay, everyone, we all have to pay this tax. And what does this jizya do for them? It, number one, exempts them from military service. Did you know that? The jizya exempts the non-Muslim citizens from military service. In other words, if the Muslim nation is attacked, they are not obligated to join the Muslim military to help defend the nation. It is the obligation and responsibility, however, of the Muslim nation and Muslim army, armed forces, and military to protect all its citizens, including the dhimmis. This money also goes towards their services for them, right? Because as I talked about before, that the non-Muslim citizens, they have their own courts. They don't go to the Muslim court because they're not under obligation of Sharia, right? So they go to their own courts. If they're Jewish, they'll have their Jewish courts, their Christian courts, and whatever other religions that are allowed. They go to their own courts because they're not held to the rules of Islam. You see? So this money goes towards them. And then as I talked to you guys in one of my older videos, I'll read it again, where it was one of the caliphs, I think it was Umar Abdul Aziz, right? Not Umar the companion, Umar Abdul Aziz. When he was the Khalifa, there was an incident where the Muslim nation was attacked. And the Muslim nation was unable to defend, I guess it's like they lost the battle, they lost the war, something like that. And they were unable to defend the nation. So guess what they did? Umar Abdul Aziz, the Khalifa at the time, he gave back the jizya because he said, look, we failed in our responsibility. We can't protect you. So he gave back the jizya. That's the Islam that I know. That's the real Islam. That's the real principles of Islam there. He was unable to fulfill his responsibility as the leader of the nation. And these people are his citizens and they paid the jizya. He was unable to protect them, so he gave the jizya back, Mr. Apostate Prophet. But that's their thing. They always trying to they always want to describe Islam in this sinister, evil, dark, dark and evil Islam is the way they always want to present it. Meanwhile, the truth is other than that. Have there been times when the Muslims may have acted outside of what Islam teaches? Sure. I'm not going to claim that the Muslims were perfect. I'm not going to claim that throughout history the Muslims have always done the right thing. I'm not going to claim that. But when they did do that, they were acting outside of what Islam teaches. Abdul Aziz, that's Islam right there. It was his responsibility to protect them. He couldn't do it. He gave back the jizya. He gave it back. He said, "Here, it's back. Unfortunately, we can't uphold the protection. We're losing the war. We're losing the battle, and we can't protect. So here's your jizya back." That's the true Islam. That's the Islam that I know. You see. So as I said in the book, the book is the rights of non-Muslims in the Islamic world. If you go to my older videos, I talked about that in that video. So let's see. There's also a time when Abdul Aziz, this is the kind of character that Abdul Aziz had as a Khalifa. There's an incident where a Khalifa before him had taken some Christian property or a Christian church or something of this sort. So when Abdul Aziz became the Khalifa, the Christians came and told him what happened. What did he do? He acted like a Muslim. He said, "Oh, that's wrong," and he gave back the church. He gave them back their property. This is on page 25 of the book, The Rights of Non-Muslims in the Islamic World. So Mr. Apostate Prophet, who always trying to paint Islam as evil and the dhimmis are mistreated and there's no equality and fair treatment, that is a lie. That is a lie. In the book it says it happened that the Khalifa Al-Walid ibn Abdul Malik took the church of John from the Christians to make it part of a mosque. When Umar ibn Abdul Aziz succeeded to the position of Khalifa, the Christians complained to him about what his predecessor Al-Walid had done with their church. So he wrote to the agent commanding him to return to them the portion of the mosque that was rightfully theirs. And he says if they were unable to agree with the governor on a cash, he said if they were unable to agree with the governor, then they should do a cash settlement that would satisfy them. So he was acting in true fashion as what a Muslim is supposed to do with the dhimmis. Not mistreat them, right? Not mistreat them, but treat them properly and fairly because they are under your protection. They are your citizens. You're not supposed to take their property. You see? So that's what Abdul Aziz did. And here's some of what the non-Muslims had to say. This is the Orientalist Sir Thomas W. Arnold. He wrote this. He says, "We never heard a report or any planned attempt to compel the non-Muslim minorities to accept Islam or any organization or any organized persecution aimed at uprooting the Christian religion." He says, if any of the caliphs had chosen either of these policies, they could have overwhelmed Christianity with the same ease with which Ferdinand and Isabel exiled Islam from Spain, or with Louis the 15th? No, the 14th. Or with Louis the 14th? Louis the 14th made following Protestantism a punishable crime in France, or with which the Jews were expelled from England for 350 years. At that time, Eastern churches were completely isolated from the rest of the Christian world. They had no supporters in the world as they were considered heretical sects of Christianity. Their very existence to this day is the strongest evidence of the policy of Islamic governments of tolerance towards them. That's true. That's a good point. That right. See, this is what they won't tell you, that the European Christians, remember I talked about this before, that the European Christians in their white racism, they looked at the Arab and Middle Eastern Christians as not real Christians. That's why I told you that when they attacked during the Crusades, they didn't only kill Muslims. They killed Muslims, Jews, and Middle Eastern Christians because they did not consider them real Christians. So they killed the Middle Eastern Christians along with killing the Muslims and the Jews because they didn't look at these Middle Eastern Christians as true Christians. This was because of their white racism and their white Christian bigotry, that they didn't look at the Arab Christians as real Christians. So they killed them also. They considered them heretics, right? They considered them heretics. So the fact that they were cut off from the white Christian world and that they existed until the modern times is a proof that Islam had not tried to destroy them or eliminate them, or you know what I'm saying, right? So that's Sir Thomas W. Arnold, a non-Muslim historian, saying about it. And he also talks about the jizya as well, right? And how they had the right to follow their own religions, right? So here we see on page 28 of the book, The Rights of Non-Muslims in the Islamic World, it says that the jizya was so light. First, let's read this part. It says, in exchange for these two exemptions, as I mentioned before, that they didn't have to, they were not required to fight join the Muslim military to defend the country, and that they could practice their religions, right? That it says, in exchange for these two exemptions, the non-Muslims pay a modest tax known in Islam as jizya. Sir Thomas Arnold, again, another non-Muslim, so you can't claim bias, right? I'm quoting a non-Muslim historian, so that way you can't say, oh, the Muslims are just trying to make it sound good. No, here's a non-Muslim historian. And this Thomas W. Arnold, he wrote in the Orientalist period. The Orientalist period was when the Europeans were, pretty much trying to negate any other civilizations and talk, and historically bad about Africa and the Arabs and whatever. So it's very rare that you would find an Orientalist speaking well of a non-white Western society or civilization. But Sir Thomas W. Arnold was honest, and he said this. He said this jizya was so light that it did not constitute a burden on them, especially when we observe that it exempted them from compulsory military service that was an obligation for their brother citizens, the Muslims. Islam also permitted non-Muslims to base their community life, personal status on their own religious regulations in marriage, divorce, and matters of that nature. In issues of criminal justice, the scholars of Islamic law declared that sentences could only be passed upon non-Muslims in matters that they also considered a sin, such as theft or adultery, but not in matters that they held permissible, such as drinking wine or eating the flesh of swine. So did you hear that? I talked about that before as well, that most of the Sharia law did not and does not apply to non-Muslims. So it's always interesting to hear them talk about how they're supposedly scared of Sharia law when it doesn't even apply to them. As you heard, the non-Muslims could still eat pork. The non-Muslims could still drink wine and sell it to each other in the Islamic State. In fact, let's read further about this. It says here, the commander of the faith. This is again about Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, right? Very good Khalifa. It says the commander of the faithful, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, found it difficult to accept how the non-Muslims in their social codes seemed to go against everything the Muslims believed, and how they continued to follow the regulations of their religion, which was so different from Islam. So he wrote a letter to the Imam al-Hasan al-Basri, seeking his legal counsel, saying, how is it that the rightly guided caliphs before us left the people of the covenant living as they did? Now this is a proof that further Mr. Apostate Prophet is wrong. So Mr. Abdul Aziz is acknowledging that the caliphs before him, other than the one that he had to give the church back to, who took the church before him, that the other ones before him, that they allowed the non-Muslims to continue to practice their religion, even if their practices violated what Islam taught. That because if their religion allowed it, the other caliphs allowed them to do it. So Abdul Aziz was wondering, like, how can we still go about this? And look what Hassan al-Basri told him. It says that he says, how is it that the rightly guided caliphs left the people of the covenant, the dhimmis, living as they did, marrying close relatives and keeping wine and pigs? So Al-Hassan al-Basri wrote back saying, they paid the jizya so they could be left practicing what they believed, and you may only follow the law, not invent something new. Assalamu alaikum. So that was the response. The response to the Khalifa from the scholar said, look, that's why they pay the jizya, so they can practice their religion and practice it as they go. You leave them alone. You can't try to change that. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate Prophet, you are again exposed for telling wrong information, sir. It says, based on the law, the people of the covenant had their own courts. They had their own courts in which they settled matters if they wished. If not, they could resort to the Islamic justice system as has been recorded in history. So they could either go to their own courts, as I said, or if they wanted to, they could seek justice in the Islamic courts. Right? That's what Islam allowed. That's what the dhimmis were allowed to do. Not as Mr. Apostate Prophet trying to make it sound like, oh, it was all sinister and evil and dark. Right? So as I had said that Abdul Aziz gave the jizya back. So yeah, let me read that part to you about what he gave the money back. Right? Wait, was it? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. This was Abu Ubaidah. This was a different Khalifa. It was Abu Ubaidah. Abu Ubaidah, Amir ibn al-Jarrah. He was the leader of the Islamic army that conquered Syria, and he made an agreement with the people of Syria for them to pay the jizya. Right. So now that's what it says. It says, finally, Abu Ubaidah wrote a letter to each of the deputies in the towns where he had made the peace agreements and ordered them to return to the people all the money that had been collected as jizya and land taxes. He also told them to convey to the townspeople. He says, we are returning your money to you because news has reached us of the armies awaiting us. One of the conditions of our agreement is that we protect you, and we are unable to do so. So we are returning what we have taken from you of the jizya. If Allah does grant us victory, we will stand by our agreement with you. When the deputies returned the money and conveyed the message of Abu Ubaidah to them, they answered, what does it say? It says, they answered and said, may Allah bring you back safely to us, and may He grant you victory. Okay, so this was one of the other caliphs. I said it was Abdul Aziz. That was my mistake. It's actually another Khalifa named Abu Ubaidah. When the Muslims were unable, and when he as the leader was unable to protect them, as you heard, he ordered his agents, his staff members or whatever you want to call it, to give back the jizya. He said, look, we can't fulfill the agreement. Take your money back. He said, however, if they are able to win, then we'll honor the agreement. But see, that's Islam. That's Islam right there. Not this stuff that these people like try to misrepresent and make it sound dark and sinister and evil and underhanded and all this kind of stuff. Okay? All right, let's continue.
Non-Muslims under Islamic rule. We see clearly in Islamic scripture and history that Muslims are obligated to fight the non-believers and to spread Islam by campaigns.
All right, again, that is a lie. We've shown that before. As I've showed you guys before, where I on one of the previous shows where we talked about the no compulsion verses, right? Let me see. So there's some further verses points. I remember the last one of the other shows I did previously, where I showed you, since we've already shown that the verses were not abrogated, that look, these verses refute what he just said, that the Muslims were supposedly ordered to fight and to spread fight and spread Islam by fighting. Right? As you can see right here, these verses clearly demonstrate that that is not the case. As you see on the screen, we already know 2:256. Here we got 42:48. But if they turn away, we have not sent you as a guardian over them. Your job is to convey the message. Right? Your job is to convey the message. Here, 1099, if your Lord had pleased, surely all those who are on the earth would have believed, all of them. Will you then force men till they become believers? As you see, it's a question. It's a rhetorical question. Allah, in other words, Allah is saying, look, as I said before, Allah is saying, look, if I wanted to, I'm God. I could make everybody believe, but I haven't done that. Will you then, you're not God, will you then try to do what I haven't done? The answer, of course, is no. No, if you haven't, Allah, if you have not made everybody believers, then no, I will not force people to become believers. If you haven't done it, how could I do it? How could we as Muslims believe it? How could the Prophet have done it? If Allah himself says, I haven't chose to do that, and Allah has the power to do that, right? Allah doesn't have to fight at all. Allah could just utter the words, I want everybody to be a believer, and everybody would be a believer. But Allah says, I haven't done that. Will you then try to compel people to believe? Obviously, the answer is no. Obviously, the answer is no. Right? Here, verses, we see that the Prophet is told that people, you can't do it. Look at 12:103. Yet, be you so eager, most people will not believe. He's told you can't do it. It's not going to happen. Look at 18:29. And say, the truth is from your Lord. So let him who please believe, and let him who please disbelieve. Allah says what? Let them do it. Let the person who wants to believe, let him believe. And let the person who wants to disbelieve, let them disbelieve, Mr. Apostate Prophet. Here's another one. Look at 6:104. It says, indeed, there have come to you clear proofs from your Lord. Whoever will therefore see it, it is for his own soul. And whoever will therefore be blind, it should be against him. And what? And I am not a keeper over you. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate, you're wrong. The Quran does not say that the Muslims are obligated, as you claim, to go out and fight people till they accept Islam. That is a lie. And we already proved these verses were not abrogated. These verses were not abrogated, as we've already demonstrated. Okay? For further reading, just go to the notes on my Patreon page, all right? For further notes, if anybody else wants to see the notes, you can go to my Patreon page. You can get the full view of all the notes that I'm showing here. Okay? All right, let's continue.
When Muslims confront non-Muslim people in the cause of expanding Islam, they are obligated to give the non-Muslims three choices. 1. Convert to Islam and there will be no fighting. 2. Pay the jizya and you will be subjected under Islamic rule as a lesser people. And, well, die.
Okay, first of all, again, this is a lie. This is a lie. This is not what Muslims are obligated to do. As, of course, that would be compulsion. Now, wouldn't that still be compulsion? Now, he does make the point that would still be compulsion. So that's why he's trying to say it's a compulsion lie. But Muslims are not obligated to do that. That's not what we are obligated to do. There's no compulsion. So we don't do this at all. There is no offer that here, do this or do this or do this, because that's still compulsion. That would still be compulsion. If I say, hey, let me give you three choices. Here, you're a non-Muslim. Here, let me talk to you for a minute. Here, I give you three choices. Convert to Islam. No, you don't do that. Okay, pay the jizya. Okay, or die. Is that not still compulsion? Because I'm implying that, look, you got to do one of these. You got to come to Islam or you're going to die. Come on now, right? That would still be compulsion. That's not what Islam tells us to do. We're not obligated to do that, Apostate Prophet. And he tries to base that off of Surah 929. But the context of 929 was that's not an obligation. That wasn't told for all Muslims. That again was dealing with a case where the Muslims were being attacked. I talk about this in one of my previous videos. When you look up the history of when what they call the occasion of which that verse was revealed, it talks about the Battle of Tabuk. This is a case where, again, the Muslims were in self-defense mode, because it says that this verse was revealed on the occasion of the Battle of Tabuk. The Battle of Tabuk, if you look it up, was a situation where the Byzantine, were planning to attack the Muslims first. And so this verse was revealed on how to address that threat. So that when you fight them, this will be the situation, because they're planning to attack the Muslims. You see? They were planning to attack and kill the Muslims. So 929 is not was not a verse that is given that this is the job or this is the responsibility or obligation that Muslims are supposed to do whenever they meet somebody that's not Muslim. That is a lie. All those other verses that I showed you are clear. Let him who wants to believe, believe, and let him who wants to disbelieve, disbelieve. I am not a keeper over you. And as I showed on the other previous show when I talked about this, one of my other previous shows, we showed how there are several verses that say that same thing over and over again. 929 was dealing with a specific situation in which the Muslims were under threat of an attack. And that was the order that was given in that situation. That is not the command for Muslims to, when they meet anybody who's not Muslim, to give all of a sudden, here, let me give you 3 choices. Sorry, Mr. Apostate Prophet, you're wrong again.
If a non-Muslim group refuses to convert to Islam or to come under Islamic rule and pay protection money, they will be fought. During this battle, they can still give up and can either convert to Islam or become subjugated. This rule is based on Quran chapter 9 verse 29, which was revealed in Muhammad's last times. And it is also clearly outlined in Muhammad's words, where he also tells the Muslims to fight in the name of Allah, in the way of Allah, and fight against those who disbelieve in Allah.
Now here, he's obviously, I doubt if the hadith is just those words like that. But again, yeah, fight in the way of Allah. In what context? See, that's what they never want to show you the context. Fight in the name of Allah and in the way of Allah. Fight against those who disbelieve in Allah. Yeah, in what context? Because they're attacking you. That's what the Quran says. So the Prophet, he can't go against that. So I'd have to see what this hadith says in his full, because I'm sure he's probably only posting part of it. But the question is, in what context is this being said? Well, based upon what the Quran says, it can only be being said in the sense of self-defense, as the Quran orders. Chapter 2, verse 190. Fight back against those who fight you, but do not be the aggressor, because Allah does not love the aggressors. So this hadith can't be a statement of aggression, to attack first. It would be, if it was, it would violate the Quran, right? If it was, it would be in contradiction to what the Quran says, which is Allah does not love the aggressors. So we can't be ordered to fight in the name of Allah and just fight the disbelievers wherever they are, attacking them first. We would be the aggressors, and we would be violating Allah's command to not be the aggressors, Mr. Apostate Prophet. So once again, you're exposed and wrong again.
Allah. It's very clear.
No, it's not clear. It's clear that you're lying. That's what's clear.
Because in another hadith, Muhammad said very clearly, I have been ordered to fight the people till they say none has the right to be worshipped but Allah.
Okay.
And later in this hadith,
let's address that one. Again, and this is what I'm talking about research. This is the thing that I'm talking about how these guys, they never want to do any real research. Okay? They never want to do any real research. Because if he had researched, let me show you, watch this. Let me show you. That if he was honest as he claims that he is, then he would have seen that he wouldn't be able to make this claim. Why? Why is that? Well, let's take a look. Let's see. Oh, wait a minute. That's in my other notes. Let's see. I believe that's right on this one. Yeah, let's see. Here we go right here. Yes, see? Can you see it on the screen? I'm already prepared for it. Like I said, these notes will be available if you join my Patreon. Right? If you join my Patreon page, these notes will be available to you. So as you see, I was already prepared. This is from one of my debates that I did against, I believe, against Robert Spencer. Right? So, but they always like to bring these up. So here's what it says. If he would have done research about the I have been ordered to fight hadith. Here's what it says. Imam Abu Hanifa and his legal school limited this hadith to only the polytheists among the Arabs. That's the first thing, that most of the scholars say that this was amongst the Arabs. Number one. So it wasn't. This wasn't a command, for all people. But I disagree with that also, because the Quran doesn't make a distinction in no compulsion, right? It just says there's no compulsion. Period. All those other verses say that if they let him who wants to believe, believe, and let him who wants to disbelieve, disbelieve. Those are all clear. I'm not a keeper over you. None of those verses make a condition. None of them say, oh, this is only for the non-Arab pagans, and none of that. Okay, but as you'll see that the fuller argument here. It says, and Imam Malik and his legal school limited it only to the Quraysh tribe among them. So according to these people, this supposed hadith was only limited to the polytheists among the Arabs, i.e., it wasn't a command for all people around the world. Imam Malik says that he limited it only to the Quraysh tribe rather than all the Arabs. Even he just said this was only for the Quraysh. Okay, but as I said, this contradicts the Quran. The Quran doesn't say that there's no compulsion in religion except for the Arabs. So unfortunately, I'm not saying that I'm better or no more, but just based upon what we see from the Quran does not offer any limitation. The Quran doesn't say that this no compulsion is only for non-Arabs and the Arabs you're compelled. No, the verses are clear that no one is compelled. Whether you're a Quraysh, whether you're an Arab, whether you're non-Arab, there's no compulsion for anybody. Okay, there's no compulsion for anybody. Okay, what I'm saying? All right. So let's go further. Imam al-Nawawi, on his commentary on the 40 hadith on page 505 of this hadith, he says that the majority of the scholars say that this refers to the Arab polytheist. Ibn Hajar states this hadith was abrogated. Now that's the point. That's the strongest argument. So now we have that Ibn Hajar states that this hadith in fact was completely abrogated by later rulings concerning peace. Look at that. Now notice how they claim the other way, that the peaceful verses were abrogated. Well, look, Ibn Hajar says that no, this hadith was actually abrogated by the verses of peace, or by the rulings concerning peace. Right? Further, it even shows that in the book, the 40 hadith commentary, that not only that it was abrogated, supposedly abrogated by the rulings of peace, but that the verses of the Quran abrogated it. That, in other words, the Quran actually abrogated this hadith. The verses that say no compulsion in religion. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate Prophet, if you had done real research, you wouldn't be making this argument. See? A person who is as you claim fairly criticizing Islam, then why aren't you looking fairly at what the Islamic sources say and see that the scholars said that this hadith either only applied to Arabs, which again I said I disagree with that. I say that that the hadith is completely abrogated, completely null and void, because it goes against what the Quran says. As we can see from the Quran, Allah never ordered the Prophet to fight people to make them accept Islam. Right? As I've showed you in my notes, there are over a dozen verses where the Prophet is told over and over and over again that let the people believe who want to believe, let them disbelieve who want to disbelieve. You're not their watcher. You're not their guardian. You're not their keeper. You're not in charge of them. So that to me shows me that Allah actually never told the Prophet to fight people till they accept Islam. He never told the Prophet that, based upon what I see in the Quran. As I said, over a dozen verses. Allah stating it over and over again. So from what I see from the Quran, Allah actually never told the Prophet to fight people. Matter of fact, that would be a contradiction anyway, right? That would be a bold-faced contradiction that in one place Allah ordered in an earlier time, said, yeah, I want you to go fight people until they accept Islam. And then Allah turns around and says, no, you know what? No, stop. No compulsion in religion. You're not a watcher over them. Let him who wants to believe, believe, and let him who disbelieve, let him disbelieve. You're not there. No, right. No, it's clear that Allah never ordered that. Okay. But in any case, if these guys would do the research, they would see that this is look, the scholars are saying that even if you want to accept that hadith, it doesn't apply to everyone, Mr. Apostate Prophet. So even if you don't want to accept my argument that it's clear that Allah never ordered that based upon the Quran, but if you want to still try to hold on to that hadith, Mr. Apostate Prophet, the scholars still say that was only for the pagan Arabs. The scholars still say, some of them still say that it was only for the pagan Arabs. It wasn't for everybody. It wasn't for Christians and Jews all over the world, as you're trying to claim. Imam Malik says, well, even he limits it even further and says it was only for the Quraysh. It wasn't even for all the Arabs. It was only for the Quraysh. And then Ibn Hajar says that nope, that hadith was completely abrogated by the rulings concerning peace and agreements. Okay? So if real research would have said, I can't claim that hadith is saying for Muslims to fight all people till they accept Islam. Real research would have said, it was only for the Arabs. It was only for the Quraysh. Or, well, the strongest opinion is that hadith was abrogated by the rulings of peace. But see, as I told you, that's not their job. Their job is to try to make Islam seem sinister and evil. Right? That's their job. Their job is to try to make Islam seem sinister and evil. So they don't want to let you know that what are the real rulings. They don't want to let you know that the opinions differ. They don't want you to see that. They want you to believe that Islam is evil and sinister and underhanded and dark. But a person who would do a real research would say, oh, okay. So according to these scholars, it doesn't even apply to everybody. Right? That would be honest, right? That would be honest. But no, they don't want that. That's not their job. That's not what they're trying to. They're not trying to be honest with Islam. They're not trying to be fair, as he claims on his Twitter page. No, you're not fair, Mr. Apostate. You're not trying to be fair. You're a liar. You're an ignorant liar. How could you miss this? If you had done real research, you would have seen that the scholars have these differing opinions. But notice, even still, all the opinions still refute your idea that the Muslims are supposed to fight everybody and compel them to accept Islam. Either they thought it was for the Arabs, or just the Quraysh among the Arabs, or that hadith was completely abrogated by the rulings of peace from the Quran, sir. So this shows you that this guy, as many of them are ignorant and dishonest, and you shouldn't listen to them. He says in his video that he's trying to get you to stay away from Islam. I'm trying to get you to stay away from him. Not because I'm scared of what he has to say, not because he knows what he's talking about, because as you can see, I'm refuting him. So I'm saying, look, this guy doesn't give you the right information. Stay away from him, not because he's telling the truth. Stay away from him because he's ignorant. Stay away from him because he's misinforming you. He's giving you wrong information. As you see, Brother Shadid is refuting him. Brother Shadid is roundly and soundly refuting him with the information and the evidence. So that's why I'm telling you to stay away. Not because we're scared of him and he knows what he's talking about. No, because if you're about the truth, if you're interested in the truth, then this guy is not the guy you want to listen to. You can see, I'm showing it in this video. I've exposed him point by point, exposing his lies, exposing his misinformation, showing you that he's wrong, he's ignorant, and he's lying. So the rest is up to you. The rest is up to you. Okay. All right. So as you can see, he's wrong about the what's the name there? I have been ordered to fight nonsense.
It is also made clear, again, for all those who have doubts, that one has only the same rights and obligations of a Muslim if he becomes a Muslim.
Again, we already refuted that, as I already showed you some of the other caliphs who, practiced Islam correctly and treated the dhimmis correctly and gave them their fair rights. And as we showed you, they had rights to their own courts. They could still eat pork. They could still drink wine. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate Prophet, you're wrong. You're being exposed, and I'm sure it's not looking too good for you.
As you can see in this clearly detailed and explained Islamic rule, as you can see, it's not the Islamic rule. He's been refuted. I've shown you the verses where it makes it clear that the Prophet was never ordered to do that, right? The verses are clear. There's no compulsion. Let him who believe disbelieve, and let him disbelieve. Him who wants to disbelieve. You're not their guardian, right? We showed that, right? We showed this clear proofs and evidences of that. So he can keep on with his misinformation. But it's clear that the verses, as you see on the screen, are very clear that this is the clear Islamic ruling. That no, we are not supposed to force people to accept Islam in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Mr. Apostate Prophet, you're just wrong. You're wrong, plain and simple. And I've exposed that. Right? Look here. Look at the. I mean, look. If you're still doubtful, look at the verses. Look at chapter 88:21. The ones with the little star next to it. Therefore, do remind, for you are only a reminder. You are not there to control them. That's a clear verse. Look at the next chapter, chapter 27, verse 80-81. Quran chapter 30, verse 52-53. It says what? Look at this. The Prophet is being told, the Muslims are being told, look, you cannot make the deaf hear. Nor can you make the deaf hear your call when they turn their backs on it. So again, Allah is telling the Prophet, Allah is telling the Muslims,
We can't make people hear. We can't make the deaf hear. And we can't make the deaf hear the call when they turn their backs on it. What's that mean? That means you can't compel people to accept Islam. You can't make them accept it. You can't fight them to accept it. You can't beat them to make them accept it. You can't threaten them to make them accept it. You can't do it, Mr. Apostate Prophet. The Quran is clear. This is the ruling of Islam. Clear verses that demonstrate there is no forcing of Islam or compelling or threatening to accept Islam. None of that works. And Allah says you can't do it. That verse is clear. He says you can't make them hear. You can't do it. If they turn their backs, you cannot make them hear it. So in other words, leave it alone. You did the message, that's it. Your job is only to convey the message. As you see in the verse right above it, 88, 21, 22. Okay? It's very clear. Very clear. All right, let's go a little further, see what else he has to say, and then we can go ahead and wrap it up.
See, in this clearly detailed and complete Islamic rule, the words "there is no compulsion in religion" are not a promise of peace.
All right, well, we already refuted that, Mr. Apostate Prophet. We already showed that how you're lying, so I don't even know why we need to further continue to listen to you. You've been exposed. We refuted you. I even showed you that the verses show that there is a promise of peace. Right? Chapter 8, verse 61 says, if your enemy wants peace with you, the Muslims are commanded to be at peace with their enemies or former enemies now that they're at peace with each other. So I'm sorry, sir. You're wrong. You're ignorant. And I'm going to continue to expose you. Since these people seem to think that you're the new hot shot, right? You're the new hot shot big guy, right? You're the new big guy on the scene now who's attacking Islam, then I'm coming at you. And I'm going to do more refutations and more exposing. So now I've done 2 videos already exposing him. Is it not clear that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about? Do I really need to do more? I will if I have to. But do I really need to do more? But I will. Don't worry, I will. We're gonna expose him some more. But there you go, 2 so far showing that this guy is ignorant and doesn't know what he's talking about. Yet he has the platform now, right? He has all the support, all these subscribers, right? But as you can see, he's ignorant. He's ignorant, doesn't know what he's talking about. What's this? Can you make a refutation of one of the videos where he lies about the rape of female cat? Yeah, we'll deal with that. Well, yeah, we're going to deal with that. We're going to get to all, inshallah. We'll get to as many as we can as we go on. False Sex says, Quran 60 verse 8. Yeah, that's a good verse too. I don't see why they are so dishonest. Do they think they are getting good deeds leading to chaos? Lying is clearly evil. May Allah protect us. Yeah, well, that's what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's hard for me to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, maybe he's ignorant, because these verses are right there. These verses are right there. Many times these verses are right before the verse that they quote. That's what's also so amazing to me in many cases. That a lot of times these verses are right. It's either right before it or right after the verse that they claim is the verse that's supposedly violent and evil. Many times the verse right before it will let you see the context is self-defense. Or that it says, that if they want peace, make peace. But they ignore that. So either they, what I mean? So like I said, it's hard for me to say that they're just ignorant. I can only say that these guys, they're plainly lying. They're plainly being dishonest. It's hard to give them the benefit of the doubt when it's so clear that the verses are right there in front of their face. How could they miss it? How could you miss the verse right before or right after that clearly gives the clear context and refutes you and shows that it's self-defense, or that the Muslims are fighting back, or that the Muslims were attacked first? You know what I mean? You can't give them the benefit of the doubt. So that's why we have to charge you as being bold-faced liars. You claim that you're fair. You claim you're a fair critic. But the evidence says, look, the verse was right there. How'd you miss it? How'd you overlook it? So, no, can't do it. Can't do it. Let me see if there's anything else.
There is no promise of peace in Islam. According to major Islamic scholars like Ibn Kathir, no compulsion in religion means that you can't go to an individual and at gunpoint force him to become a Muslim. But Islamic texts make a difference between individuals and the tribes or nations they belong.
Man, look, come on. Enough lies, man. Enough of these lies. I've already showed you the verses from the Quran that are clear. It doesn't matter if it's individual, a tribe, a nation, a country, or whatever. There's no compulsion in religion. The verses are clear that I showed you. Do I got to put them on the screen again? Let me put them on the screen again. Put them on screen. Look at the verses. It doesn't matter. Do these verses make a distinction? Do you see that the verse says only the individual? Do these verses say only if it's a nation or if it's only if it's an individual? No, the verses are clear. There's no compulsion in any way, whether it's an individual, a nation, a tribe, a country, a state, a territory. There's no compulsion, Mr. Apostate. I know you don't like that. I know you want to make Islam seem evil and violent and they want to take over. But I'm sorry, sir. As you can see on the screen, these verses do not make a distinction between individual and tribe. It's very clear that there's no compulsion, period. Whether you're a tribe, a state, nation, or an individual, you cannot compel people to accept Islam, sir. The verses, as you see on the screen, are clear. Look at chapter 6, 107. If Allah had pleased, they would not have set up others with him. And we have not, look at the verse, Mr. Apostate. And we have not appointed you a keeper over them. And you are not placed in charge of them. Is that not clear, Mr. Apostate? Is that not clear, sir? It's clear. And notice, it doesn't say individual or nation. It says point blank. That means this verse doesn't matter whether it's an individual, a nation, tribe, state, territory, or whatever. There's no compulsion. You are not a keeper over them. All right? You're not a keeper over them. Here's another one. Look at 1693, another with the star on it. It says, if Allah so willed, he could make you all one people, but he leaves straying whom he pleases, and he guides whom he pleases. But ye shall certainly be called to account for all your actions. So once again, Allah is saying, look, notice how Allah makes the point clear that, look, he has the power to do that. But he says what? But I don't do it. Allah says, look, I'm God. I'm Allah. I have the power to make everybody be one people. But what? But I haven't done that. I haven't done that though. See? Allah says, I haven't done it. I have the power to do it. But look what he says. Right? He leaves straying whom he pleases, and he guides whom he pleases. So therefore, you can't make people believers. If Allah doesn't do it, how then could Muhammad think he could do it? How do the Muslims think that they could do it? Right? Allah is more powerful than us, right? Allah has the power. He doesn't even have to lift a finger, metaphorically, right? That's just expression, right? In other words, Allah doesn't even have to move at all. He can just say, I want everybody to be believers. And everybody would be believers. But Allah says, I haven't done that. If Allah, the mighty God, has not made everybody believers, how then could the Muslims think that they could do it? The answer is we never did think that we could do it, and we can't. And if any Muslims did think they could, then they're violating what Allah says, as these verses are clear. If there have ever been any Muslims in history that thought that they could force everybody to accept Islam, or that they think that they want to make the world accept Islam, you're wrong. The Quran shows that you can't do it. You can't do it, and you're not commanded to do that either. Right? Look at the Quran. The Quran is clear that you can't do it, you won't do it, and you have not been commanded to do that anyway. As Allah says, you are not their keeper. You have not been placed in charge of them. If I'm not in charge of you as a Muslim, how then do I think that I could make you accept Islam by force or threat or whatever, right? I can't do it. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate Prophet, but you're wrong. Okay, you're wrong. The promise of peace is very clear, right? The promise of peace is very clear, as these verses demonstrate, and as we've demonstrated in many other verses. Okay, very clear. Okay, very clear. All right. Very clear. So, I don't, the evidence is just overwhelming. The evidence is just overwhelming that this is the case. Okay. I wanted to touch on this a little bit more because I didn't get a chance to show you, which was some of the further notes on abrogation. All right. Some of the other statements about abrogation too, just to show you, right? So it says here that this is from that article that I was talking about, that from the article by Dr. Isra Ahmed Khan in the article Arguments for Abrogation in the Quranic Critique. He says that one does not find any direct statement of the Prophet indicating that any verse of the Quran as practically invalid. We have in the book Ulum al-Quran by Ahmed von Denver in page 109, he says, still others hold that there are no genuine reports available on the issue going back to the Prophet, i.e. on the issue of abrogation. In other words, there's no evidence that the Prophet taught that verses of the Quran were abrogated, or that the peaceful verses were abrogated, as I stated earlier. Okay. Here's Imam Tabari. Imam Tabari in his work Divergences of the Jurists. He says the most proper interpretation of Surah 60 verse 8 is that God commanded kindness and justice to be shown amongst all kinds of communities and creeds, and did not. This is what I said. Remember, Mr. Apostate was claiming that, oh, this is only for there's a difference between individuals and communities. Tribes and nations. Well, look at what Imam Tabari says. He refutes Apostate Prophet like I did. Imam Tabari says that the most proper interpretation of Surah 60 verse 8 is that God commanded kindness and justice to be shown amongst all kinds of communities, sir, and creeds, and did not specify by his words some communities to the exclusion of others. That's the claim that Mr. Apostate was trying to make. That, oh, well, the Muslims, they make a distinction between individual. No, they don't, sir. No, we don't. No, we don't. You're lying to the people. That's right. I'm accusing you of lying. I'm not even going to give you the benefit of saying you're ignorant. I'm not even going to give you the benefit of the doubt and say, he's just ignorant. He don't know no better. No, you're lying. As you see, Imam Tabari says there's no distinction, sir. He says no distinctions. He says that there is no distinction, and God did not specify by his words some communities to the exclusion of others. He says God speaks in general of any group that does not openly fight against Muslims or drive them out of their homes. And the opinion that this kindness was abrogated by later Quranic statements makes no sense. Here's another one by Imam Ghazali. Imam Ghazali in his work, The Thematic Commentary on the Quran. He says the allegation that 120 verses of the invitation to Islam were abrogated by the verse of the sword is in fact one of the crassest stupidity, and only serves to show that a great number of Muslims are in a state of regression of either knowledge or intelligence in our time, and have become ignorant of the Quran. Imam Sayuti specifically discusses this verse in relation to other verses of peace, patience, and forgiving. He explains that contrary to what some imams believed, he says this is not a case of abrogation, but rather of context. In certain situations, the verses of patience and forgiving apply, while in other situations, the verse of the sword applies. He says no verse was completely abolished by another, but rather each has a specific context and applicability. That's in his work Al-Itqan fi Ulum al-Quran. Okay, so Mr. Apostate, your claims are just wrong. All right, his claims are wrong, as we have demonstrated here. Okay, so let's see what else he has to say.
This is the early spread of Islam. Only an idiot would believe all the nations in the way of this expansion just gave flowers to the Muslims and said...
Now here's the point about this. Now notice, only an idiot would show that picture and ignore that Islam spread. Notice that map doesn't show the rest of Africa. What Muslim armies ran through all of Africa, sir? Notice the map doesn't show Africa, right? It only shows the Middle Eastern region and Asia Minor. Why don't you show in Africa, sir? Only an idiot would think that Islam, went around the world like that. But what about the Muslims? What about Africa? What about sub-Saharan Africa? How did Islam get to China? What army went? What army went to China? What Muslim army went to China and forced the Muslims to become Chinese to become Muslims? To this very day, there are Muslims in China who have historically been Muslims for centuries. What army went to China? None. What about Malaysia and Indonesia? Those are some of the biggest. Those places have more Muslims than the Middle East. What Muslim armies went there and forced Malaysia and Indonesia to accept Islam? None. None. So only an idiot would try to use this picture and act like, the Muslims went all around the world and forced people to accept Islam. Were there cases where Muslims, as I said, I'm not claiming that Muslims were all doing the right thing throughout history. But to sit here and use this picture and act like, Islam never, was all spread completely by violence or compulsion is a complete lie, and it does not go with history, as I even showed with Sir Thomas W. Arnold. Who in fact charges that many of the historians that make that claim that Islam did spread by the sword, he says they're liars. He says there's nothing more. Basically what he says, he charges that the people who make that claim are a bunch of biased Christian and Western historians. That's what Sir Thomas W. Arnold says. He says the people who make this claim that Islam went around the world forcing people to accept Islam by the point of the sword, he says most of these people are either Christian evangelists or biased Western historians. That's from a Western historian himself, who did the research and found out that the reality is that no, Islam did not go around the world trying to force people to spread by the sword. Again, were there some cases? Okay, am I back? Yeah. Okay, I'm back. Yeah. Okay, it should be back on now, right? Yeah. All right. So as I already showed, that if this is what Ibn Khaldun actually said, then this is a violation of what the Quran says. There is no obligation to convert everybody to Islam. I showed all those verses to show that the Quran makes it clear that there is no obligation at all to convert everybody to Islam. Allah already says that that's not what he wants. That's not what he wants. Allah already says that he doesn't even do that. Allah says, look, if he wanted everybody to be a believer, he could have done that. So he says, will you then try to force people to accept Islam? In other words, you can't do it. In other words, you can't do it, and I'm not telling you to do that. Because Allah says, if I wanted that, I would have done it myself. Allah is already showing you that if he wanted to do that, he would have done that himself. But he doesn't want that. That's why he says, let him who believe, believe, and let him who wants to disbelieve, let them disbelieve. You're not their guardian. You're not their keeper. So Ibn Khaldun is wrong. Okay? So sorry, you try to use a Muslim who's wrong to try to make your argument, but I have the strongest argument because I already showed you that the Quran says that that is not allowed. Okay? So we don't need to spend any further time on Ibn Khaldun.
Blamed that non-Muslims and Muslims don't have equal rights under Islam. What's also important to note is that under Muhammad, the dhimmi system and the jizya were only applied to Christians, Jews, Sabians, and later to Zoroastrians. That's why fundamentalist Muslims view the dhimmi system and the jizya to be applied only to those groups. Other groups can be fought and killed with...
All right, again, another lie. Lie. I already showed that is a lie. I already showed from the Quran that, as you saw Ibn Tabari said, look, let me go back to Ibn Tabari. Sorry, so you know the lies, man. The lies are amazing. The amazing lies that are told. Look what Imam Tabari, or let's read it again. He said, Quran chapter 60 verse 8. The most proper interpretation is that God commanded kindness and justice to be shown amongst all kinds of communities and creeds, sir, and did not specify by his words some communities to the exclusion of others. So I'm sorry, sir, your claim that that only applies to Christians and Jews and Zoroastrians and everybody else can be fought is a lie, Mr. Apostate liar. Mr. Apostate Liar, you're wrong. That is not the Islamic ruling. That is not the Islamic teaching. That, oh, this only applies to them, but whoever's not a Christian or a Jew or a Zoroastrian, we can fight and make them. No, 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 no. As Ibn Tabari said, chapter 60, verse 8 shows that God, Allah, is saying that this is the rule for everybody. He says God speaks in a general of any group. Any group, sir, that means the polytheists included, that does not openly fight against Muslims or drive them out of their homes. Okay? So that means this verse of peace and kind treatment and justice applies to all people. Whether you're not a Christian or not, or a Jew or not, you still get the ruling of kindness and justice as long as you're not trying to fight us. So, I mean, damn, do we really need to go any further? Do we need to give this guy any further? He's clearly ignorant and doesn't know what he's talking about. Clearly ignorant, doesn't know what he's talking about. So we already refuted that.
Without having such an option. Convert to Islam or die.
Lies.
So early Muslim caliphates did indeed forcibly convert non-Muslims. Or,
as I said, if they did that, then they were not practicing Islam correctly. But as I already demonstrated, that they were the caliphs that practiced it correctly, they ruled according to Islam. As I showed you the example of Abdul Aziz, right? When he was told by the scholar that he wrote to for advice that, look, you got to leave them alone. They're the non-Muslim citizens of the nation. They've paid their jizya. You can't force them. They can still eat pork. They can still drink wine. They can marry their close relatives. Leave them alone. That's the rule. You can't change it. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate Prophet. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay? That's evident. That's clearly evident that you don't know what you're talking about.
With renouncing and abandoning Islam. The vast majority of Islamic scholars in history agree that apostates deserve to be killed. And that's very clear in multiple hadith, reported as directly spoken by Muhammad.
Okay, now he's on the apostate thing. Now we talked about that before, one of the previous shows as well. So let's go ahead and address the apostate thing. As I demonstrated that the Quran talked about, as a matter of fact, those verses that I already showed you. Let me see, where's that at? Where's those verses? Some of these verses that you see on the screen, they also address about people turning away, right? Right there, like for example, 40, 42, 48. If they turn away, we have not sent you as a guardian over them. Your job is to convey the message. Look here, look at the next one, chapter 6, verse 66. Your people have rejected it, even though it is the truth. Say, I am not appointed a guardian over you. Look at chapter 5, verse 54. It says, "Oh, you who believe, whoever from this is a clear verse about apostasy. Whoever from among you turns your back from his religion, then Allah will just replace you." It says, look, Allah will bring a people. He'll bring somebody else to replace you. You ain't got to die. It doesn't say kill them. He shall love them and they shall love him. Lowly before the believers, mighty against the unbelievers. So here Allah says, look, if you turn from your religion, Allah will just replace you. Notice the verse doesn't say kill them. Okay? So we've dealt with this already in the other show that I did, where I addressed the claims about apostasy. And then I showed you, here, let me show you that right now, where the proper ruling and understanding is that this ruling, the death penalty on apostasy, is not for apostasy itself, where somebody just has a change of heart or change of faith. It is for people who leave Islam and attack the Muslims. All right? So let me show you that. And I gave you the hadith before. Let me show you it here. Oops, wait a minute. Okay, right here. So as you see on the screen, this is an article by Dr. Jamal Badawi. Right? By Dr. Jamal Badawi. And here he shows that this version, which specifies that this ruling of death penalty is for somebody who, not somebody who just left Islam, but somebody who left Islam and then came to fight the Muslims. So as you see, look at this version of the hadith right here from Bukhari. He says, one version of this hadith quoted above is quite revealing and may help answer these questions. It says, Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, narrated that the Messenger of Allah said the following: that the blood, and this is this hadith, or a version of this hadith, apostate prophet gives, but he doesn't give this version of it. It says, the blood of a Muslim who confesses that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and that I am his apostle, cannot be shed except in 3 cases. A married person who commits adultery, he is to be stoned. And a man who, look what it says, and a man who went out fighting against Allah and his messenger, he is to be killed or crucified or exiled. Notice this exemption. They don't even have to be killed. They can be exiled from the land. And a man who murders another person. So here the prophet is said to give more details on the so-called apostasy ruling, that it is not apostasy that gets the death penalty. It is a person who commits an act of treason. See, it says a man who went out fighting against Allah and his messenger. And notice, he doesn't even have to be killed. He can be killed or crucified, or he can be exiled. He doesn't have to be killed. He can be exiled from the land. So further refutation that the claim that, oh, the apostate has to be killed. And Jamal Badawi shows that there is a hadith where, let me show you that, where a man apostated and the prophet didn't kill him. He let him go. Why? Because the man peacefully left Islam. Right? Here's the hadith right here on the screen as you see it here. Right? It says, most significant is a fact that a case of apostasy was reported in the most authentic book of Hadith, Bukhari, reported by more than one reliable chain of narration with a stronger isnad. It says the following includes a translation of the most central hadith. Here's what it says. It says, Jabir ibn Abdullah narrated that a Bedouin pledged allegiance to the apostle of Allah for Islam, i.e. he accepted Islam. And then the Bedouin got fever, whereupon he said to the prophet, cancel my pledge. In other words, I'm leaving. I want to leave Islam. I changed my mind. But the prophet refused. He, the Bedouin, came to him again saying, cancel my pledge. But the prophet again refused. Then he, the Bedouin, left Medina. Allah's apostle said, Medina is like a pair of bellows. It expels its impurities and brightens and clears its good. So the man still left Islam regardless of whether the prophet accepted his pledge anyway. He still just left. And the prophet let him go. He didn't say, go get that guy. He left Islam. He has to die. He didn't say, go track him down and bring him back to me and kill him in front of me. No, the prophet let him go. Why? Because the man, he apostated. But he apostated how? Peacefully. He didn't leave in trying to fight the Muslims. He didn't leave with an army, or he didn't commit an act of treason or sedition within the Muslim nation and try to attack the Muslims from within. He apostated and he left peacefully. The prophet said the prophet didn't do nothing to him. So the scholar, the brother Jamal Badawi, shows that this is an example of where a peaceful apostasy does not carry any penalty. Okay? So it shows very clearly that this doesn't carry a penalty. So it says, if indeed the revealed prescribed punishment for apostasy is death, the prophet would have been the first to carry out the punishment. In fact, he did not even prescribe any punishment at all against the Bedouin, nor did he send anyone to arrest him as an apostate, imprison, or ask him to recant or even reconsider his decision as later jurists prescribed. Nor is there any solid ground to claim that this and other similar hadiths were abrogated. In fact, these hadiths are in conformity with the Quran. Exactly. And that's my point that I'm showing you, brothers and sisters, and liars and people who follow the apostate prophet. That the argument that I'm bringing you is consistent with the Quran. The Quran does not call for the death penalty of apostates. Right? And even in the Quran, it talks about the hypocrites, but the hypocrite who attacked Islam, as I told you in chapter 4, chapter 4, verse 89 and 90, which shows that it makes an exception. It says if the person leaves, but they are with the people who are not trying to fight you, and the person is not trying to fight you, the verse says leave them alone, proving that this penalty is only for people who commit an act of treason, meaning they are fighting you from within. They are traitors and they attack you. It says, but if they're not trying to fight you, then Allah says he gives no way for you against them. You leave them alone. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate Prophet, that all your arguments are being destroyed, and thereby you and your career in the future. Because you clearly don't know what you're talking about. Okay? So that deals with the apostasy claim. And for any further notes, like I said, join my Patreon page and you will see, you will get my notes on apostasy. Well, we talked about, like I said, and I did a show. So if you want to get more, just go back to the show that I did addressing the apostasy thing. But the notes for the apostasy are available to refute the apostasy claims are available on my Patreon page if you join. Okay. All right. So we refuted him on the apostasy claim as well.
Prophet. To make it very short, you as a non-Muslim can't be approached individually and forced to convert to Islam.
All right, that's a lie. We already refuted that. I already showed you, as Imam Tabari said, that it doesn't matter whether you're an individual, a nation, whether you're polytheist or you're not a Christian or a Jew. As Imam Tabari showed, it doesn't matter. And of course, the Quran makes that point. Those verses in the Quran are clear. They do not offer any limitation. They do not provide a condition and say, oh, it's only or an exemption or an exception. It just makes it point blank. There's no compulsion for anybody. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate, you're wrong. Okay, you're wrong. So what's this here? Here he goes with his trying to, make it sound sinister and evil and all of that. But again, we already refuted these claims here. No forcible conversion, but fight. Sorry, wrong. Fight them and leave no other choice. False. I already proved it. Subjugate, take money, treat like dirt. No, false. No treating like dirt. I already gave the example of Ibn Abdulaziz, Abu Qatada. What was it? What was that? Abu Ubaidah, and a number of others who did not try to treat the Dhimmis like dirt or whatever, or this once you Muslim, you never go back nonsense. We just showed the hadith of the man who became Muslim and then he changed his mind and the Prophet let him go. So I'm sorry, Mr. Apostate Prophet, you're refuted over and again.
Of darkness in which Islam decides how you live your life, or if you live a life at all.
All right, enough of the lies. We dealt with it. We refuted you. It's clear that you're just trying to paint Islam as evil, but the facts say otherwise, sir. The facts say otherwise, that you are just wrong and misinformed, ignorant, lying, spreading hate-filled propaganda to try to demonize Islam. It's clear that you've been refuted, sir. It's clear. Okay? So, as I said, they want Islam to be dark. They want Islam to be sinister because that falls into their false narrative. That helps. That's the narrative that they want. They want Islam to be evil. But as I demonstrated time and again, and I demonstrated just now, that real Islam is not what they're making it out to be. Real Islam is peaceful. Real Islam can and does allow peace with non-believers, whether you're a Christian or Jew or a polytheist, atheist, or whatever. As the verse says, as long as you're not trying to fight us, we won't fight you. As long as you're peaceful with us, we're peaceful with you. Right? If you want peace, we want peace. That's what the Quran says. There's no compulsion. There's no compulsion, whether you're an individual or a group. No compulsion, sir. So the evidence is clear. The apostate prophet has once again been refuted. And inshallah, we'll make some more videos and refute him further. Okay? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you, Brother Sammy. Yes, thank you. MashaAllah. Well done, Brother Shadid. Phenomenal. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. And as I said, continue to support me so I can continue, all of you, to do this work. All right? We do it fi sabilillah. I do it for you, my brothers and sisters, to help you. I do it for anybody who has doubts about your faith, your iman. If you're having any doubts, come talk to Brother Shadid. Look at my videos. As many have told me, my videos have helped them. Well, continue to watch and share the videos with others. If you know somebody who has doubts, put them on to Brother Shadid. Share my videos. Like I said, you have permission to translate. Translate into Turkish. Translate into Hindi. Translate into Urdu, Spanish, Malay, Chinese, Japanese. Translate to German, Russian, whatever. Translate. You have permission to translate. Wherever Muslims are, translate. You have permission to translate this and spread. Don't forget, like the video. Don't forget to share it. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever other social media platform. Let's get the word out there. Let's get these videos viral. Let's increase our numbers like these people have. Matter of fact, let's get more numbers than they have, so that we can get the word out, inshallah. So I appreciate you guys checking in, and we'll go ahead and end it there. And inshallah, look for some more videos. I'll take a look at some people recommended Christian Prince. maybe we'll take a look at him. Maybe we'll do some videos on, not maybe, we'll do some videos and address some of his claims as well. All right. So, and don't forget, join the Patreon page. Sammy, my brother Sammy said, check it out. I'm going to check it out and see how many people joined, inshallah. Again, I just appreciate you, brothers and sisters, for, watching, for tuning in, for following me all these years, for the support that you give, whether you give moral support or you donate and sponsor me. I appreciate it all. May Allah reward you. All right. Y'all have a good night, and inshallah, we'll do some more videos coming up soon, inshallah. All right. Assalamu alaikum.